All right, everybody, welcome to our in-service for February. We were supposed to be in person in Sussex County, but Mother Nature has different plans. And that we've got, I don't know, 5 to 7 inches of slushy ice and snow. So that, while we love to be in person, at least we're able to switch here to be virtual. And by doing so, we have almost 30 people that are able to join us from all 3 counties. So our Sussex in-person in-service has turned into a virtual lunch and learn for everyone. So I love it. Adrienne, I'll turn it over to you and you introduce yourself and take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Lauren. Good morning, everybody. And I am happy to be here. As Lauren said, in person is always better. I much prefer it's just more engaging. People tend to ask questions more. But that being said, I think we're all used to really just adapting, improvising, and overcoming. Life throws us things and we roll. So I am Adrienne Owen, as she said. I do work at the Office of Child Advocate. I am policy and training person, basically for MDT, multidisciplinary response. So DFS, law enforcement, DOJ, really how we receive, process, and then respond to suspected abuse and neglect of children. That being said, I also dabble into other areas of training like mandatory reporting, wherever needed. I am coming to you today, though, about which is a different topic, and you're thinking, what does this have to do with child abuse, safety, personal safety? I am coming to you today about this because prior to jumping on board with OCA back in the end of 2020, I was with the Delaware State Police. And so I had 27 years with the Delaware State Police, very blessed for that lovely career. And so it is part and parcel. It is part of our inner core about safety and awareness. And so I have done this training in different venues, but also for OCA as well at our annual retreat. And so that's why Lauren had reached out to me to talk a little bit. I am in no way, shape, or form an expert. But that being said, 27 years of doing this, I can bring you some helpful ideas and thoughts around personal safety. And a lot of them are common sense. And you might think, as you hear me talk, like, well, Adrienne, that's common sense. What I've learned from watching in 27 years, again, of responding to things going wrong is that we often override those things that we know are common sense. We tend to override it. And so a refresher is always good about thinking about safety and what we can do and how to navigate if something does happen to us. It's a little bit unfortunate or unexpected. So while I don't think that you will probably encounter that, likelihood is slim, whether it's in your own life or as a CASA. The bottom line is we do know that things happen and we have to be prepared. So I'm going to go ahead and quit yammering about that. And I'm going to switch things around. Just give me a moment and show my PowerPoint. And before I do that, though, is my little warning. As you can tell, I am, like Lauren, I'm a fast talker. I'm very energetic. I don't know how to dial it down. At 55, I've tried and I am how I am. And so if I'm going a little fast, you can be like, Adrienne, you got to slow down. I'm about to get a headache or a seizure. I'm okay with you saying that. I'm very informal and approachable. So please just say that. And if there's questions, again, ask your questions. If I think it's going to take too long, I'll just say, hey, let's come back to this more towards the end. So, but I'm very open to answering questions and giving you the best answer that I can. And if I don't have an answer today, I will find you an answer. All right, I will quit with the basics and get set up here. Can everybody see? You okay with that? Everybody good? Can see my presentation, I'm assuming?
No, we still see you actually.
We don't need that.
Friends, actually 3 friends down there.
Okay.
Yep, perfect.
Broke down here. But
Okay.
it's
I
nice
think we have an unmuted.
actually,
There we go. Not that I can't. That is the life of us doing everything virtual. I just do sometimes it's distracting. Okay, so I will get underway and start to into the material. So I'm going to give you just really quickly a few little pieces of national data. Just kind of drives home and brings awareness to how commonplace, unfortunately, we do see violence happen. The safety tips, which can apply to personal and to work as well. And when I say work, I mean like your volunteer work, what you do, or even if you have a full-time job as well. Talk for a moment about active shooter. I'm going to talk about just trauma. So, a shooting event, a violent event is a traumatic event. So I'm going to talk about that and its impact on our brain, our neurological pathways. And then I'm going to wrap up just talking about the Capital Violence Intervention Program, which is something simple. It's a simple tool or resource that you can use if you have court dates that you might have concerns about, court appearances, hearings. So what I talk about is obviously hard material. I mean, I'm talking about the reality of being hurt by someone, by a violent event happening, in your daily day, or in your work. So, but I don't want you to think that this is all terrible. And I want to leave you with distress or feeling anxious by no means. I really just want to basically build awareness, establish helpful habits that prepare you and your loved ones to navigate any type of unsafe situation. We know that the more we think about this and that we kind of process this type of situation and think what we'll do and map out what our course of action might be, it strengthens our ability to survive and overcome. So that is why we talk about it today. Tough topic, scares people, but I assure you by just talking about it, you're building your chances of rolling out of a situation okay. And your loved ones are people that you care about or that you're trying to help out. So you see shooting data here, and this is from the Gun Violence Archive. And I am not providing this information. It has nothing to do with like, gun control. I know that's a hot topic people believe in or don't believe in, whatever, but I'm just want to give you some idea of how, prominent gun violence is and how we have to be aware of that. I know if we watch the news, we're aware of that, but I think it helps us to look at it and see it in our own two eyes. When we look at 2015 to 2024, you can see here, we had 16,725 deaths. Now that includes homicides, malicious, like accidental deaths, but that's a lot, 16, almost 17,000 by gun violence. And then you look at 31,000 injuries. Mass shooting. So mass shooting or murder is where there's 4 or more victims other than the perpetrator. So mass shootings in our country in 2024, 503, 30 of which were mass murders. That is a lot of gun violence that occurs. And so that's why it really behooves us to just think, will it likely visit us? No, but can it? Yes, we have to keep that in mind. When we talk about school shootings, and this is just to build awareness, and you might say, I don't have kids in school age, but you do your youth that you work with. We look at 2018 to 2025. Well, I'm going to go 2024 here. 222 school shootings in which at least one person was killed or injured since 2018. 39 school shootings in 2024. And then when we look at the number of people injured, right, we had 18 killed and 59. It's a lot. What we see is that it's not getting better. We're typically maintaining, and sometimes, we have peak years, but it is a reality of the world in which we live. And then we look at courthouse data. It's a little tougher to find courthouse data about violent incidents. So this is a little bit older, but you just look at like from 2005 to 2011, you look at the increase from 2005, they had 10 recorded violent incidents up to 67 in 2011. So violent for this data is, as you can see, shootings, bombings, and arsons. But then you have to look at other types of violence, which are just the threats of violence, the menacing. Someone, when we say menacing, is in your personal space in an intimidating manner, in a threatening manner, or even just actual physical attacks. And you can see here, there were 78 recorded between 2000 and 2009. So something to think about as we go into courthouses for our hearings. I know that some of your hearings are going to be virtual. You understand that. But I also know some hearings have to be in person, or some, judges prefer to have in person versus virtual. So food for thought. And we also look at, I'm going to move away from the data, but when we look at that, the majority of the shootings occur in open space. This really never changed year to year. Open space. So out on the streets, for example, parks or commercial establishments. So businesses, educational settings, healthcare settings, and even residential settings. So the top 5 locations. I only say that so you can think about that. You can start thinking about, like, what would my plan be? What would this look like if something happened in a commercial space? Maybe that commercial space is the store that I go to on the regular to get my groceries, or my healthcare setting. I don't think you think about, like, if I go to my doctor's office, that there could be an event that happens, a shooting event or a violent event. Not because it's typically where someone is going to go conduct an act of shooting, like just start shooting random strangers. That's typically going to be a scenario where there's a domestic violence abuse situation that's gone sideways, a relationship, and maybe one of the employees at the healthcare facility, your doctor's office, dentist's office, maybe one of those employees has broken up with someone, and that party has come to inflict violence. So, all right. So personal safety sites, what do you have to think about? Like, where can you start thinking, do I have to come up with a plan? Do I have to think this through? Again, I mentioned commercial establishments, healthcare, open spaces, whether that's a parking lot that, you park near, or your street, Like I said earlier, you take your kids to play, the dog park where you take your dog to play, schools, residents, or how about this, in the vehicle while driving? We hear consistently on the news and in social media about the increase in road rage. It's going to happen. It's going to happen as we continue to have more drivers on the roadway. And then we'll talk about work sites for you. The Wilmington Courthouse, the Dover Courthouse, including the parking lot. We know the Dover great courthouse with a parking lot. You have a neighborhood, which is a right there next to you, sitting adjacent to, or I should say the courthouse sits at the edge of that neighborhood there in Dover. And that neighborhood, while it has plenty of lovely, good-hearted, hardworking individuals, the bottom line is it's a very high response for police area. So thinking about what does it look like getting from the parking lot into the courthouse. Georgetown, very unusual setting. You have to park at any number of locations. Or what about the courthouse parking lot in Wilmington, getting from that parking garage into the building? Home visits. What does it look like when you do a home visit? Or even just a chance encounter? I hope, we've thought about, is it possible when you're out and about in your daily life that you run into, maybe you're heading, to run an errand, and you are at a store and you run into, or like the gas company or the electric company paying a bill, and you run into someone that is a disgruntled person, a disgruntled parent, maybe that's been TPR'd. So thinking about what will that look like? I know that's a lot of food for thought, a lot to process. But I lay out here all these possibilities because we should kind of little by little kind of think like, what will I do? Okay. And I know for the courthouse, you have multiple occasions where you could have to appear for hearings. It could be the PPH, it could be an adjudicatory, dispositional, judicial review, a permanency hearing. So there's a number of times that you might have to respond to one of our courthouses. So I'm going to talk now, I'm going to move into personal safety tips. And really, I'm coming to you because Lauren wanted me to talk to you as with your role as a CASA. But so much of what I want to talk about, we apply to like work, also just applies to our personal life. And we can share these with our loved ones, or just in our daily activities. Excuse me. I apologize. I woke up this morning. I'm so sorry. I believe I'm starting to get a little bit of a cold or whatever the virus is going around. So, of course, as the morning's progressed, it's starting to kick in. So I do apologize if I have to clear my throat or swig some water. So, but that's reality. I think we all navigate that from time to time. So, talking about planning ahead, I want to have a few slides where I talk about planning ahead to whatever the event is you're going to do. So, how about apprising or updating your supervisor, coworker, or if it's a personal errand, your friend, family, of the location and time of your home visit, maybe the court date, or if you're running errands, what is the errand you're going to be running? Like, let someone know, let them know what you're going to be doing. Hey, today I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take care of these things. I'm going to go here and there. Or again, if it's, as a CASA, I'm going to go to this home, or I'm going to go, to the court for this. Obviously, you're going to let your, maybe let your CASA coordinator know, but let someone else know. Let someone that's a peer CASA that you work with, or let a friend or family member know what you're doing. That way, someone is always kind of in tune with what's happening and knows to make sure and check on you when you're overdue or they don't hear from you. Good idea. It's the same thing we do with our kids and our loved ones, right? Hey, let me know when you get home safely. Same concept to apply for this. And we get a little comfortable sometimes if we think, oh, it's a great family. I've not had any problems. We don't know what could flip that switch and change that person to be a little bit different the next time you're going to encounter them, whether it's at a building, at a courthouse, or at a home visit. So always letting people know. Inquire about any court dates. I think this is, or court orders, I should say, I'm sorry, any court orders ahead of time. I'm sure you do this, but always making sure that there's a check done. And I think, well, we talked about this last time. I believe there's some sort of access where they have a way to check if there's, before they engage with a family, maybe to do a home visit, that they're finding out, are there any PFA orders in place or no contact orders that are in place? Because things can happen from the last time you've had contact to the next time. So I believe, Lauren, that that's something that they can check with their CASA coordinators. I don't know how much access they would have, right, to Delgis, but that can be checked for them.
Yeah, you're right. So what happens when usually before each court hearing is your CASA coordinator will look up the parties in your case on Delgis, and usually the courts do as well. But just to make sure there's, just to kind of get an idea of what's going on, especially if there are any PFAs, which is protection from abuse orders, any pending capiases or warrants or things like that. It's just helpful to know. So most of the time your CASA coordinator will review Delgis, and if they haven't, certainly ask, for them to double double check DelGIS, especially when you have your triad meetings with your child attorney and your CASA coordinator in court in preparation for court.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate that. And she talked about a case, which is, of course, your failure to appear for something or failure to pay a fine. You might think, well, that's benign. Maybe it doesn't even have to do with this case. But what I can tell you from years of doing my law enforcement work is that someone that is wanted by the court because they failed to appear for maybe something unrelated to your case, maybe it's a criminal activity they've been involved in, or they have an active warrant for something they've gotten in trouble for, they might still be very upset about navigating with someone that's from the system. I know you're volunteering, but if you're there, looking out for the child, they're looking at you as someone from the system. So knowing that, that they might not be very welcoming, they're in the home of a home visit, and they're not welcoming of you being there. So it's always good to have that information. Be clear on who'll be present. If you can, you're find out who's going to be there. I get if you're doing a home visit that you don't have control over who's in the home, but ask. Nothing precludes you or nothing prevents you, I should say, from saying, hey, may I ask who's going to be in the home? I just always like to have an idea. There's nothing wrong with that, with trying to find out who's in the home. Gives you an idea, because you might end up finding out that you want to take someone with you, which it goes to my next. Take someone with you. Go in pairs if possible. I know there's limitations, but you're limited on who you can take with you. If you're doing a home visit, for example, but always good to have someone to go with you, especially if there are some safety concerns, if there's been a violent incident involving any of the parties. And it definitely, for even your personal life, take someone with you. If you're going to go somewhere that's, you've never been before and you're a little concerned, take someone with you. Two is better than one. Safety in numbers. So continue with, with planning ahead. Ensure that your workplace, or ensure that your CASA coordinator, whoever, that they know what type of vehicle you drive, the description, registration number. Always good to have that information on file. But also make sure your family knows. Make sure your loved ones know. Make sure they know what car you're going to be taking. In case, again, you're overdue getting somewhere, and then if the phone call has to be made to a police station to say, hey, they didn't text me to say they were where they're supposed to be. You could say, if you had any accidents, your loved one can say, are there any accidents involving this car? I know, again, that seems morbid, but it takes a second to do that, and it's going to definitely make things a little bit easier. All right, so keep all valuables out of sight. I say this, try not to wear jewelry or items of value that look of value. And I think probably most people do that, but just be mindful of that. It might be that you continue to wear the same pair of earrings or the same nice watch. It looks expensive. I would think about if you're doing a home visit, or you're just going out again to, run errands somewhere where you're unfamiliar with. Keep those things. Don't have them on your person and invite an issue. Keep them out of sight in your car. I know ladies are famous for, my car's locked, so my purse can be in the back floorboard. No, it should not be. Not at all. Take it with you or put it in the trunk, whatever that looks like. Don't leave it in sight. This came up in conversation when we did our Kent County training, when I got to do not wear your lanyard around your neck. So I am very big on that. That is for your physical safety. Is having the lanyard or something around your neck is never a safe thing, because if someone goes to physically attack you, they're going to grab for what they can get a hold of. And so they can grab that lanyard. And you're now being pulled. You could be choked. You could be, suffocated is what it really is. Never a good idea. I know you have to keep the lanyards. You do that, say that you're a CASA. I don't want to get in the way of what the protocol is. But I know that, you can get them. They can clip to you, the little clips. You can clip it on you somewhere. So that little, badge that you carry in your lanyard can instead be clipped on you. I really am a strong, firm believer in not having that lanyard around your neck, so that you can be grabbed. I can tell you. So, for example, for law enforcement, state troopers, all law enforcement for the most part, when you get into the colder months, they have a tie. We have a clip-on tie. We would never have a tie around our neck so that someone can grab that and swing us or, choke us. It just rips right off. It's a small detail that can make a huge difference for you. So sorry about that, Lauren, but I'm gonna preach that for safety.
That's awesome. Have at it.
Okay. And talking about what we're wearing, wear practical clothing that doesn't restrict our movement. I know we want to look nice. Nothing wrong with that. Heels. Some ladies can get around and move in heels very well. I will still say, I think, you're going to do a home visit, and it might be that the family's been very open with you and workable, and peaceful, but you never know what you're going to encounter. And clearly there's been some issues, that have occurred in the background for that child to land with OCA, where you're involved with them. So I say always go in with clothing like sneakers or something that, you can really move easily in if you have to take evasive action or you have to unfortunately engage physically with someone. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But again, can it happen? Sure. So continuing on with our planning ahead here, know where your destination's located. I know this seems common sense, but it's amazing how many times people are like, well, I know, I know where that is. Look at it. Don't just find out like on your, you look it up on your Google Maps or whatever maps you use, but look at the surrounding area. Know the landmarks. Know that if you have to take a different route, maybe you're, approaching and there's an issue. And so you have to have a different route. Just the more we know, the better prepared we are. If you're going to an area that you're just not sure about, I mean, you can ask your CASA coordinators, obviously, about a certain neighborhood or location. But you know what? You can also call your local police department. And this applies especially for in your own personal world, and whatever you're doing. If you're going somewhere you've never been before to visit a friend or go, whatever that looks like, make sure, or not make sure, but know that you can call your local police department. You can ask. I remember years ago working, I was at Troop 3, Kent County. It was my home base forever at the state police. And sometimes you'd have to sit at the desk. You'd have to sit what's called desk duty, and you're answering phones and keeping an eye on the prisoners that are there at your troop and letting people in and out. And I remember multiple times, getting phone calls from people. They're like, hey, we're looking to move from wherever, like Pennsylvania, here in this area, Dover. Can you tell us these neighborhoods we're looking at? Can you tell us, there are a lot of problems there? What I have to say is it a high police response area? So I have to ask, and I can give you some good information. Again, share your location when you're getting ready to head out. I'm repeating that. Share your location so that whoever needs to know, your CASA, another CASA, your CASA coordinator, your friends, family know where you're going. Be sure your vehicle is adequately fueled, especially from inclement weather. How timely. But make sure your vehicle's fueled. What if you end up being kind of maybe it's a little bit more, tougher area of town for your visit, and it's getting dark and maybe there's an accident and now you can't get anywhere. You're kind of stuck somewhere. Make sure your vehicle is equipped for that, so that you can keep running, you can keep safe, you can keep warm. Ensure your cell phone is adequately charged. Keep your charging cord and or charging bank right in your vehicle. Always good to have. We just never know. I remember heading up to training, I don't know, a few months ago back in October, and being stuck on Route 1 in the entirety of northbound Route 1. We were shut down for 2.5 hours with nowhere to go. 2.5 hours. I'm certainly glad I had what I needed. My car was adequately fueled. I wasn't going to freeze. So I even keep blankets in the back. So continue with our planning ahead. Change your route of travel from time to time. So this is just, I'm talking about your errands, or if you still work and you're heading to and from work, change your route of travel. This might have to do with like your CASA duties, but think about that. Don't always take the same route. I mean, if someone is following you, maybe someone is angry, someone's disgruntled with you, or maybe a loved one of yours, and so they target you as well. Change how you're getting home so that they don't know. Change things up. I always did. I mean, sometimes you don't have many routes to take home, but I wouldn't take the same route all the time. I would switch it up and go one way and go another way. It was maybe a few extra minutes, but I just wanted to make sure that, people weren't always watching where I was going if I was being followed. Granted, a little bit different for law enforcement, but still something helpful. Keep a flashlight in your car. Yes, our cell phones have them. We love having everything on our cell phones. And they are bright little flashlights on our cell phone, but keep a flashlight in your vehicle anyway. Make sure you check the batteries periodically. Like when you check your smoke detectors every 6 months, check the flashlight or the batteries in your flashlights in your house and in your car. Keep a first aid kit in your car. I'm hoping most people do. You just never know if you might need it or someone you run across might need it, or, whatever that looks like. You just never know. I can learn learn or review basic first aid skills. Again, since retiring, I've been retired 4 years. I have multiple occasions. I don't know if the universe is like, here, Adrienne, we want you to still keep doing this, but I've multiple occasions come across accidents that just happened, or literally 2 different occasions, someone laying on the side of the road in broad daylight, laying there, and having to stop. But I'm not saying that you have to. You're going to do what you feel comfortable with. But just know that you should be prepared to handle anything, or if you're just maybe something happens at a home visit, and you just need the first aid kit, right, for first aid. All right. So I want to talk about en route. I talk about planning ahead and thinking, what about en route to where we're going? And this ties in a little bit to like not just work, but personal and this road rage that goes on. So if another vehicle begins to follow too closely, right? So we know people tailgate all the time. And if another vehicle begins to follow too closely, when possible, move to the right and allow the vehicle to pass. And some folks probably thinking, yeah, Adrienne, that's pretty simple. That's 101. But sometimes I think we can get a little indignant. I'm one of them. I'm gonna own that. We get a little indignant, and I don't like to be tailgated. I don't think any of us do, but I'm kind of like, no, I think I might want to slow down a little bit because you're being rude. Don't. We're only inviting issues. The person behind you could actually be someone that could be prone to violence, and we don't want to provoke that. And so, just when you can, get out of the way and let them go. It is not worth engaging, even if they're wrong, they're rude, they're ignorant. Let them go. Don't engage in gestures and yelling at the other vehicle. Some of you may be very calm and thinking, I'm not going to do that. And some of you, I'm going to guarantee you, even based upon my last CASA training, some of you, and what was said to me, some of you are going to be like, that's kind of hard, Adrienne. It is at times. But because people can be crazy and rude out there and they're driving, but let's just, you know what, just stay in our zone and not engage. If you're being followed, proceed to a well-populated area, like a Wawa, right? There's always people 24/7 coming and going from Wawa. It's well lit, it's well populated, or go to the nearest police department if it's close by and you know where that is. If you're being followed, the other thing to think about when you're being followed, you're definitely like, okay, I'm being followed. Keep driving to the police station or a well-lit area, but try to make note of that vehicle. If you can, the color, if you can figure out the make or model, or if all you know is it's just a big SUV. It's a big gold SUV. Okay, that's fine. If you know the license plate or you can see it, like they have a front tag and you're like, I don't know, it's white. It looks like it might be Maryland. That's fine. And then go ahead and call 911. While you're en route somewhere, well populated, call 911. Don't hesitate to call them. Don't think for a minute, well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. If you're being followed, if you made a turn and they're following you, you made another turn and they're following you, and you're thinking, this is not normal. You're like, okay, they're following me. Go ahead and call 911 and tell them and say, hey, I'm headed to the Wawa, I'm headed wherever. They're going to send an officer. Actually, 911 is going to keep you on the phone, and they're going to send an officer to the nearest officer in the area to come check things out. It's okay. An officer would rather come out and pull the car that's behind you over, and it turns out to be innocent, than that something does happen and you're hurt. So don't hesitate. I think most citizens that are just trying to be good people and do the right thing are always afraid to call 911 because they're like, I don't want to bother the police. I understand that. As a former officer, I appreciate that. But it's what they do. That's what they handle. We'd rather someone be safe. Upon arrival, notify that before, don't even get out of your car. When you get to your destination, notify, text that if you're calling, if you're talking on the phone, that's fine. Or text your coworker, your family friend, your CASA coordinator, whoever it is, whoever your person is, you notify them that you're there so that they're aware. Park in a well-lit area, especially if you have to visit after dark. You want to park in a well-lit, well-populated area as best as possible. Try to do your visits before dark, but I know sometimes we get stuck somewhere and we're coming out after dark. I get that, but try to do this well before it gets dark if possible. Don't park next to a large truck or SUV. You can't see, can you? It's easy for someone to hide next to that. And you're trying to approach your vehicle and you cannot see if someone's near your car. And also, just from if you're in a vehicle and a larger SUV is next to you, it's hard to see even to back out of your parking space. You're like, I can't see around this car. Don't get out of your vehicle till you have all of your needed items in hand. Take only what you need, the bare minimum. Again, nothing flashy. I try to say don't take a purse. If you have to take a bag because you need, a notebook in it, whatever, that's fine. Keep everything to a minimum. Keep things out of your hands and don't get out of the car till you have everything you need. Don't exit your car if you observe someone suspicious. Listen to your instincts. We all have them. That's basic. It's wiring. It's animal wiring is the bottom line. We are biologically designed to have that internal alert system that works without even our conscious brain realizing it. But even then, their conscious brain takes over and you think, something doesn't seem right about that person. And this is where we kind of go wrong as nice people. We think, well, I don't want to judge. That's not right. Maybe they're nice. Adrienne, I think that don't judge people. Not judging, but you need to listen to that because that internal instinct is almost always going to be right. So if something doesn't seem right, a situation, a person near you doesn't seem right, don't get out of your car. Sit there, wait for them to leave, wait a little bit. If you need to back out of your spot and drive around a little bit and come back, that's fine. If you're a couple minutes late to your appointment, that's fine. Stay in your car, call them, text them, whoever it is you're meeting, and say, hey, I'm going to be just a couple minutes late, and then drive around and come back. That's fine. Just listen to that instinct. I cannot tell you the number of times responding to situations on the job in my prior life as a trooper where people are like, I knew something was wrong. I knew when I got there something didn't feel right. We are biologically designed to have that instinct. Look at your surroundings. Just be aware. Look around you. This is all the time. Situational awareness. 2 words. Situational awareness. You should be using that at all times. The only place you probably don't need it as much is your home, where you are right now, or maybe like your loved one's home, right? But situational awareness. Always know what's going on around you. Always have a baseline of what's happening around you. Look around you. When you're getting out of your car, when you're in public, don't look at yourself. I'm not saying you can't occasionally, if you're trying to get directions or you're looking at a text, that's fine. But what about people that are busy on their phone? We see it all the time, especially with our younger people, our younger generation, where they're looking at their phone, and they're walking and they have earbuds in too. I'm like, oh no, that's a recipe for disaster. Don't do that. Be aware of what's going on around you, and let's go to the earbuds. You're probably not going into, an appointment, a home visit, but in your own, like maybe you like to go walk in the neighborhood or the park, whatever that looks like, or the gym, you work out of the gym. I'm going to say this, do not have both earbuds in. I don't like any earbuds in. I'm going to say that, but if you need to put one, that's fine. So you can hear, but if you have some hearing impairment, some hearing loss, I'm going to say don't have any earbuds in, when you're walking at all or working out. It just doesn't pay off. And when I did this training with my OCA team at our annual retreat a couple years ago, I had multiple people say to me during that and after that training that they were like, you know what? I was out running or walking or exercising. And it's funny because I ran across someone and you know what? This just makes sense. I did run across someone suspicious. So I know I need to pay attention. I know I need, like, not having both earbuds in. And just last week, the young lady told me, she goes, I'm training for a marathon now. So I'm out for a long time. I stopped using both earbuds. It's so simple, makes a huge difference. Walk confidently and briskly and with purpose. Walk like you are walking the runway, like you own the place. I don't mean cocky, obviously. We don't want to turn people off, right? But walk like with purpose, make eye contact. I mean, you don't want to be creepy, obviously, and stare people down. But walk with that purpose, like you have some confidence. Predators. So I'm going to go to, maybe you're making a home visit and you're going through the neighborhood, or you're just, again, out and about in your neighborhood, or you're out in public. Predators are looking, predators, those that want to inflict harm on us, that want to steal from us, that want to hurt us. They're predators, and they look for prey. They look for people that are not paying attention, that look, quote, weaker, that vulnerable. So when you walk with purpose, they know you're aware and you see them, number one. You're making eye contact, you're walking with purpose. But they're also thinking that's not someone that's gonna be an easy target. And so they want an easy target. That makes a difference. That is, that little ounce of prevention goes so long. If possible, walk with others. If you're out exercising, walk with others. When I talk about doing your home visits, walk with others. What if you're in, you're my Newcastle County folks and you have a hearing in the courthouse and, you're in the parking garage? If possible, if you see a group of professionals walking in, you clearly they're going into work. Maybe it's some attorneys. You can tell they're in their work gear. They have their briefcase, their bag, their laptop. Walk with them. Walk over in and, into the elevator with them. That's walking with others. And that is going to be safer for you. If you can, try to keep your personal space in public. Don't allow people behind you if you can. When you're walking, by the way, also into wherever that might be, I call it your dominant hand. Call if you're right-handed, your right hand. If you're left-handed, your left hand. Keep that free. So at least you have that to grab onto someone, to push someone away. Keep that free. It's amazing how many times, because we're right-handed, we're going to walk with our phone or whatever in our right hand. Keep that hand free. Only use your weaker hand to hold items. If you can, just put it in a little bag. It's on your shoulder, something like that, or in your coat pocket. Looking at time here. Upon arrival somewhere, to a building, so I'm going to go to, you're going to the courthouse, parking garage up north. You're going to, get into the parking garage elevator. Look in that elevator. If you're using the stairwell, look in the stairwell. We just roll in and don't think about it. That's lack of situational awareness. and we go right in, or we walk into a store and we just pull the door and we walk in, or the sliding doors open to our Walmart and we just walk right in. Look, it just takes a nanosecond to survey and know what's going on. You never know what you're walking into. It could be someone that's looking to target you, or it could just be that there's something harmful happening at that moment. Go back to if someone makes you uncomfortable. Now, if you've gotten out of your car and you're in the parking garage, or maybe you're just, got out of your car and you're walking into the Georgetown courthouse, whatever that looks like, or you're walking towards a home visit and someone makes you uncomfortable, go back to listen to those instincts, return to your vehicle. So you're already out of your vehicle, return back to the vehicle if you can. If someone is trying to come at you, yell, call 911, blow a whistle, keep a whistle on your keychain, blow a whistle. It sounds silly, but you're going to get attention, and be loud. This is not the time to be humble. It's not the time to be embarrassed. Be loud. Mean it. Just like you're going to walk like you mean it, but you call for help like you mean it. Yell at them to stop. Call 911. Help, whatever that looks like. And, the other thing to think about is, again, we go back to, I'm talking about all these things. I want you to start thinking about what will that look like as I do a home visit with that place? What will it look as I go into this building to run my errands? What does it look like to go into the courthouse or the parking garage? You're going to start thinking about what my course of action will be in your mind. Imagine the scenario. If I get out of my car and I'm walking and something happens, because this is where I usually park or can park. Or this is, I know I've been to this house before for home visit. This is where I know I can park. But you start thinking about, like, what will that look like in your mind? You know why? Because as we think about what my response will be, how I'm going to walk up there, what will happen if someone comes towards me aggressively, what will be my course of action? You're building neural pathways. You're literally building neural pathways. And so if you build those neural pathways, you have a better chance of falling back on that. It's even better if you can physically take action. Like, what will you physically do? But, it's not, that's probably not going to happen. You're not going to run through a scenario where you're pushing someone away from me because they're attacking you. But in your mind, if you're thinking about what that looks like, I'm going to yell. I'm going to be able to maybe use my phone. I'm going to notice that someone's coming at me when they're still 25 feet away, and I can use a safety app I have on my phone, or that emergency number. I'm going to grab my whistle. I know where it is. And you're thinking about that. You will fall back on that. And you need to do that, because if you haven't built neural pathways, there's a good chance you're going to fall back on nothing. You're going to freeze. And we don't want freeze for you. We want you to you want to come out of this and your loved ones go, I'm so scared and sad that happened to you, but thank gosh you're okay. And you want for your CASA coordinators to be like, oh my gosh, thank God you're okay, because you thought this through, right? We all want that for you, and you want that for you. So talking about, I had mentioned, if you look back up to the second bullet point, return to your vehicle, blow a whistle, call 911, whatever it looks like, or activate a cell phone safety app. Hang on here. There are multiple, not to use them. I'm just giving you ideas, thoughts, resources, things food for thought. There are multiple safety apps. I can't say that one is better than the other. There are some really good ones like Be Safe and Noonlight and the Red Panic Button. Explore them. A lot of them are free to download. There's sometimes a little minimal cost of $5 a month to maintain it. You might say that's not worth it for me, Adrienne, but maybe you do. Maybe you think I'm just really active. I'm always doing things. It's not just my CASA, volunteer work, but I'm always out and about doing things. Then might behoove you to look at these and explore them. And there's ways that, your app has a button that you can push, and it automatically is going to be sending a call to 911 for you, as well as notifying loved ones in the area. A lot of different, explore them, read about them, a lot of things that these apps can offer. It's just an option, or something that you can share with, like, your children or your grandchildren as an option. I shared them with my niece and nephew, and they've used them ever since when they were going to college, and now even as adults. Okay, individual safety, continuing on about this. So looking inside the residence, right? You're at a home visit. Think about this. First of all, again, take someone with you if you can. Be clear on who'll be present. But upon entry, I'm going to scan for safety issues. Like, think about, like, what could be a weapon. I know that's terrible, because you're thinking about engaging with the family or engaging with the child or the parent and just having a conversation, and that's your purpose. But think about that before you even get there. Like, get that done ahead of time. And then as you approach and you're walking in, you're scanning and you're looking and you're saying, okay, hey, well, I see that. Why is there a hammer laying there on the coffee table? And maybe it's because they were hanging a picture. Who knows? But that's a weapon. Just know what is around you. Don't go to the kitchen to sit down if you can for a meet and greet. Kitchens are never great. There's lots of weapons. There's knives. Not a good thing. And plus, they're usually further into the house. If possible, it's great if you can. I know you can't control where someone wants you to sit in their house completely, like what room you're in. But if you can, you want to be as close to the door as possible and be able to see the door, who's coming and going, and see those points of entry and exit from the room. You can see here this little picture of a room, it's just a living room, and a little arrow is pointing out there's doors, like where people could come and go, or where you could go if you needed to. Maybe you're by the front door and someone's coming in the front door and they're angry and confrontational. Then you know that you could start moving towards like one of those two rooms where there's an arrow pointing to. That's helpful. Have an idea. Just have a quick plan of like, what will I do? If you can, sit on hard furniture. I mean, it's not possible. They have upholstered furniture. You have to sit on the furniture. I would say to you, don't sit all the way back and get comfortable. Sit on the edge of the furniture if you can. The reason I say that is things get stuck. Harmful objects get stuck in the cracks. I know that sounds insane, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in homes where there are knives, there are needles, there are all kinds of things, safety razors that are stuck in the sofa. So in the back where the couch cushions meet the back. It's also harder to get out of upholstered furniture. If you have to get up fast, I mean, let's face it, none of us are getting up fast as we get a little bit older. Our bones are like, whew, no, slow down. I know mine are like, Adrienne, you need to slow down a little bit. Who do you think you are? You're not 20. But if you can, try to sit on the hard furniture because it's easier to get up out of hard furniture faster if we have to. So yeah, we don't always control the dialogue or control, what the scenario looks like, but we can think about that when we get there. So maybe you have an agitated person there. I don't know if any of you have encountered that, but you're there, it seems calm, and then suddenly someone presents themselves. They come in the back door, they come from upstairs, they come in the front door, the side door. Number of reasons that they're agitated. They might be agitated because you're there. Maybe it's the parent, that's, really angry about the situation. Maybe they've been fine before, but now they're angry this time because they've been given false information by someone else about their case. That's not true, but, they're given false information and now they're angry. Or it could be mental health issues. It could be drug usage. It could be that there's a domestic altercation happening. Maybe you're there to engage with certain persons, but they have like a niece and her boyfriend that are also in the home, and they're having a domestic altercation. So any number of reasons could make someone agitated that are well beyond the scope of why you're there, but you have to navigate that. And so they can, exhibit aggressive behavior. You're going to yelling, pacing. Someone pacing is a good indication. That's a cue that they're starting to become more intense and agitated. Throwing items, obviously they could be speaking irrationally, clenching fists, all signs that you need to attempt to depart and call 911. That's your best course of action. If you can get out and call 911, get out and call 911. If you can't leave right away, obviously, attempt to talk in a calm tone. We know that. I mean, we know that from kids, right? You're raising kids and engaging with kids, or just anybody upset. Yelling at them is never going to work well. Nobody responds well to being yelled at. I'm not saying there aren't times that you have to be sharp and direct in your tone to get attention. Like, stop now. Sometimes we have to do that. We call that command presence voice. But for the most part, talking calmly is always going to be better. We know that someone that's really agitated in this hyper aggressive state doesn't respond well to yelling. I put here if a weapon is displayed, run, hide, fight. So I'm going to talk about run, hide, fight in a little bit, but that goes to just attempt to depart if you can, attempt to leave the premises. If you can safely do it and everybody's safe, call 911. Again, we go to call 911. Do not be afraid to call 911. If it ends up being okay before the police get there, that is okay. It's okay. You know what? As a police officer, they're going to be like, easy call, easy breezy for me. This one's easy. Trying to get my slides to go. I'm checking the time. I'm going to take a break in another few minutes so that we can all, move a little bit, stir a little bit. It's a lot. It's a lot I'm throwing at you. And it's kind of, it's hard to make it even more interesting. When we do the virtual setting, this virtual format is delightful and that it's convenient. We can record it. We're not out in inclement weather. We can be comfy in our house and drink our coffee. And but it's just a little bit, it's always better when we do this type of training in person. All right, so the courthouse setting, I'm going to talk for a minute about that. I'm talking about personal safety really around home visits, being out in the community, or just your own personal world. You're running your errands or taking care of your daily needs or going to the doctor or whatever that looks like. I want to switch more to the courthouse. And so we have two main violent situations that occur or could occur, right? So there's the active shooter situation. I'm going to talk about that, the run, hide, fight mantra, but we have to think about directed physical violence, right? So someone is mad at us and they're directly attacking us, or maybe they just want to rob us or maybe it's someone with mental health issues that's just not of sound mind that day and just attacks you. So when we talk about directed physical violence, excuse me, it's important to think we always maintain that personal space if we can. I know when you're talking about getting into like the courthouse and you're waiting in line and it's hard to have personal space, but that's why if I'm in line and say there's someone in front of me, right, typically behind me, I always stand like this. Like I'm always canted and it might seem odd to people, but I want to be able to have like arms this way to people and no one in front of me and behind me. I'm certainly looking around, but you will never see me standing in line. Like if we're lined up, I don't line up that way. I never will. I've never, ever done that. It just allows a little bit of personal space and I can see what's behind me. I have an idea. Again, I know I repeat myself a couple of times, but you know why? They're important things. They're basic, but we don't listen to this as humans. Follow your instincts. If you're picking up signals, looks, vibes, listen to them. They are on the money. They really are. It's just something that gives you that like, if a situation or person gives you pause, there's a reason. It's making you pause. It's making you think something isn't right. So like investigate a little, make more personal space between you and that situation. Keep paying attention to it by looking, but also look around, but pay attention to that, kind of get a little dot into that to get a better read. Create space by moving if you have to. If someone's starting to be very agitated, that talk about maintaining personal space, but start creating space, start backing up, start moving out of line. I'm going to get out of line. If I'm in line I'm getting out of line, wherever that is. I'm moving, I'm getting out of line. If you start being attacked, again, I go to no, help, call 911, but yell it. You need to yell it like you are the angriest you've ever been at your kids when they did the most terrible thing they've done. You need to be right because your life could depend upon it. And if you are now being physically attacked, or someone is, when I say that, I don't mean they're just punching you, but they're coming at you, they're grabbing you, swinging, whatever that attack looks like. This is not the time to be polite or timid. Use force, and you need to move like your life depends upon it. You strike fast and you strike hard. And again, I know I'm talking about things that are very uncomfortable, and the likelihood is slim this will ever happen to you. But statistically speaking, based upon the number here today, it has or will happen to someone in this group. Maybe not a violent attack, but someone aggressive. So strike fast and strike hard. And this is where we go to creating, thinking through, what will I do? What will that look like in our mind? And creating a neural pathway, even if you're not physically practicing, like striking someone, like doing what's called a palm strike. If you're not, maybe physically practicing on, someone, like doing self-defense, physical self-defense class, you're still thinking about it in your mind, what that will look like. And you'll go to that. That's what your brain will start to fall back on. So then strike hard and fast, whatever that looks like. I'm going to say this. I don't talk about, it's not a self-defense class. I talk about situational awareness, personal safety, things to think about. Self-defense class is really something that if you want to know self-defense, you take the class because you need to practice it. You need to practice. And I don't teach that, not my wheelhouse. Obviously, I know how to use it because you do as law enforcement. You learn this very early on. But I will say this to you. Think about the vulnerable body parts on a person or where you want to go. Eyes, throat, nose is a big one. You get someone hard in the nose, it's going to stun and it hurts and their eyes water. And it gives you time to make space and get away, to get them off of you. If they've already got a hold of you, you're hitting hard. And then hopefully you can pull away fast, move fast and hard. The gut is always good, or the groin. And when I talk about what part of your body to use, meaty part of the palm, it's hard. You think about it, you got all of this motion and move like you mean it. Like if you're going to hit in the nose, hit, move fast, hit. If you need to do the throat, if you need to just take the side of your fist, you hit right here, hit hard, hit on the nose, palm, or this. Elbows, great tools. If someone's behind you, elbow. And you see here the picture here, this lady is stomping on the foot. If you got to stomp on the foot, an elbow in the gut, elbow in the nose if you can. If someone's coming at you face on, I will say this, that believe it or not, it works. And, people joke about well, ladies, if it's a man, you want to attack in the groin. Absolutely, you do. You need to strike where it's going to, again, have an impact, and you have a chance to get away, pull away fast. If you hit in the groin, it's clearly going to get someone, it's going to kind of weaken them, and you're going to have a moment to move. You're going to pull fast, so you're going to hit, and you're gonna pull fast. So maybe you elbow. I know elbows are great. Elbow, elbow in the gut, top on the foot. If they're facing you, then knee in the groin, punch in the face. I'm going to say or hit like this in the face, and make it fast. By the way, if someone has you in a chokehold, or like really, I should say like this, like where they have you, their arm around your throat, try to turn, by the way, your throat. So your little Adam's apple is in this crook, right? So your Adam's apple is in the little crook right here, this crook in here. You want to be like this. You can breathe better. If they have you like this, you can't. But if you move, you will be better. It's kind of hard to show you in this virtual format, but get where you can do that. Here's the other piece. Drop. If someone's got you like this, you want to take your arms and put between their arms, like fast, and drop. Like drop all your weight, like you're going to drop on the ground. But that will break, it will allow you to use your body weight to break from their hands. So if they've got you like that, go in between and drop your body, like let your legs go a little bit. I know it seems silly, but that's the chance you have. You got to have that moment where you're breaking away from them. And then you're screaming, and you are screaming like, get help. I can tell you now, if you're screaming like multiple times, get help, help, call 911, someone is they're going to come and listen. I know sometimes people joke around, like teenagers will joke around and you'll hear them in public, like, yeah, get help. And they're just goofing off playing with each other. But if you're screaming it like you mean it, and you're going to be, because you're in a situation where you're tense and you're very uncomfortable, someone is going to pay attention to that. So it's 10:56. Hold on a minute here. Yep. I'm going to let's take like a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back for run, hide, fight. Get through that. Sound good, Lauren?
That is perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. We'll get back into run, hide, fight. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit about the impact, the neurobiology, what happens in our brain in a traumatic event. And again, I certainly know a lot about personal safety, clearly from 27 years in law enforcement, but I don't purport to be an expert, not a neurobiologist, not a licensed clinical social worker, but I can give you a little bit about the neurobiology of trauma, a traumatic event, only just from, we have to really look at this for law enforcement. I should do training for law enforcement, by the way, about a traumatic event, how it affects the brain, and how that translates to what people will or will not do in the event and what our expectations are of them. So that's why I talk about it. But we'll do that, and then I'll wrap up with the VIP. And yeah, we'll go. And so far, I don't have any questions. They're like, no, we're just listening, Adrienne. We're along for this rapid-paced ride. So thank you so much. All right, so run, hide, fight. So we're talking about an active shooter situation, which you can encounter anywhere. Clearly, we are all, I believe, acutely aware of, about 10 years ago when our Wilmington courthouse encountered an active shooter. So, we always think, we see it on the news, and we hear maybe people we love in other parts of the country might be navigating that, but we think it's not going to happen. And it does, and it did to us. And so we have to definitely be prepared for that. And again, a little bit of preparation can go a long way to making it a very survivable event. So the run, hide, fight is really for the federal government. The FBI and the federal government had come up with this, and they still utilize this program as the best course of action. So the run is it's simple. If possible, if there's considerable distance between you and the gunfire or an armed person, and you have an accessible escape path, quickly move away from the sound of the gunfire or the armed person, going away from it, run. If you're in a building, exit if possible. If you're out in public, you just want to go in the opposite direction from that. I know it's tough. Like if you're in a city situation, you got taller buildings and gunfire echoes, and sometimes it's hard to hear, but clearly you're going to run for the nearest place you can to be safe. And most of the time you're going to know if you're in a public setting where that gunfire is coming from, also because you'll start seeing people that are right next to it moving and running away from it. So when at all possible, we want to try to move. Running is always the best option. And when I say run, you maybe can't run, but start moving, start evacuating away from it quickly, as quick as you can. Leave your stuff behind. Don't worry about taking it. And it sounds silly, but we tend to think about like grabbing what we can. It's instinctual. Don't leave it there. And that's where I go to like creating neural pathways. Think about what this will look like in your head, and that you're making a point of like, I'm moving. Like I know I have a place to go, and I'm not taking things with me. Take others with you if you can. Don't stay behind because others will not go. Clearly, you're going to make that decision. If it's your personal family and you're you're gonna obviously, I'm sure, stay with them. Or if it's a kid, I get that each situation is different, but the FBI says, don't. Reason this comes up is, we look at like the Twin Towers. You had some folks that were like, no, I'm not going, and they weren't evacuating. I'm talking about with 9/11. If someone clearly needs help, you're going to help them. But if someone chooses not to go, you don't stay. Go. You need to go and get to moving. Try not to move injured people if possible. And again, that's a case by case. The reason is some people that are injured, you're going to do more damage by moving them. But that being said, if it's your loved one, it's a personal situation, maybe not a courthouse shooting, but a personal event, you're probably going to want to be helping them. I understand that. Again, these are to think about best case scenario. Don't get hung up trying to get someone unless it's your loved one. And we're all a little bit different as well. I'm clearly going to be a little bit different with my law enforcement experience. This is what I did, was go to these events. And so I'm going to be getting people, but that's not your obligation. Your obligation is to get out. And that's what law enforcement wants to see. They want to see as many people as possible get out. It's less people to try and, help out of the situation. So we move to the hide. If the shooter's in closer proximity, you don't have an evacuation route, hide in an area out of their view, behind furniture. They're looking for targets. They're looking, sometimes they'll have a targeted person. If you're in the dentist's office, maybe they're looking for their ex-wife or their ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, whatever that looks like. I get that. But for the most part, it's indiscriminate. And so you want to be out of their view. And that greatly enhances your chance of not. I'm so sorry, my throat. I'm getting some feedback, so I'll also stop for a minute. Think about schools. And so schools, they practice these shooter drills, the active shooter drill, and there's certainly windows on doors, but what they practice is going to the farthest point from that so that they're not seen through the window of the door. Because shooters are going down the hallway and they're looking for an open door, and they're looking for, if I see someone in the window of that door, they're looking for I hate to say it, but the maximum damage, the maximum harm that can be caused. And so when you're out of view, you greatly enhance your chances of not getting harmed. So look for whatever that looks like. If it's, you need to behind, like if you're in public, go behind a thick wall, a place with fewer windows if possible. Look, lock doors. If you're getting to a room, lock a door, barricade it with furniture, put a bunch of stuff up against that. It makes it much harder. If a shooter's coming up, maybe they decide they want to go ahead and kick in a door. If they kick that door and try to come in and you've got furniture up against it, I'm going to tell you, they're not going to keep pushing. Not unless they're looking for someone that's in that room in particular, like that's a personal attack. They're going to go on to the next place. They're going to keep walking down the hallway and they're going to go to the next place they can to shoot. So if you're going to a room, close the door. If it's a closet, close that if that's what you have, and just push stuff up it if you can. That's going to make you give you the best chances. Close windows, shades, blinds, avoid being seen. A lot of common sense, but think about it. Go through this in your mind, what this looks like. So wherever you go, if you go to certain courthouses for hearings, you know where you go. Think about, where could I go? What would I do? And by the way, I show a little video if we can get to that point in one of our courtrooms here in Delaware. Go where it's a physical, like it's someone getting a little violent with their loved one. Go behind, if you got to go to where the judge sits, like if that's where you got to run is to the back, like you're going to go. This is a situation where it's violent. You need to go where you need to go, or you need to go hide where you need to hide. That is okay. The rules don't apply at that point. Turn off the lights, silence phones if you can. That's a lot of thinking to do when things go south and they go sideways. We don't always have the ability to think logically. That diminishes our prefrontal cortex and is active. So it's going to be hard to think about it, but if in your mind, you're building a neural pathway and like, okay, I'm hiding and I'm just turning my phone on silent. I'm turning my phone on silent. Or turn off electronics if you can. That way nobody, if a shooter's going by, they're not going to hear that. If they hear noises, they might be tuned in to go there. There's people there. If you're outdoors and you cannot run safely, find, like I said, something like a wall to go behind, a brick wall, large trees, something like that. If you got to hide behind a car, hide behind the engine block if you can. The engine block can stop a large number of bullets. There's a large variety of bullets. Some they can't, but think about that. Remain in place until you're approached by first responders. Fight. As a last resort, we want to fight. Excuse me. If you cannot evacuate, you can't hide safely. Only when your life is in imminent danger, you want to take action. You can see this picture; it's a little bit blurry, but you want to. If there's a couple of you, have a plan. Maybe it's like waiting by the door. You're at the door because you want to hit when they come in. That's fine. Then one of you grab. It's a fire extinguisher. If you want to grab, I don't know. If maybe it's a room and you have a vase or whatever, a chair, whatever you think can be an object, a bottle. Maybe it's in a restaurant and there's bottles. Grab a bottle, but you want to have a weapon and you want to strike hard. This is where we go. You have one chance, strike hard and incapacitate. And I would say if there's a couple of you in that room and you're or in that space and you have to fight, then you can do this verbally. You could be like, if it was Lauren and I would be like me, and I'd be like, I'm going to go for the head. And then for her, I'd be like, go for here or go for the hand. So we're going to kind of talk about that. We're going to kind of like motion for each other. So one of you go for the head and one of you go for the hands. Best thing that you can do. If someone's coming at you with a gun, you're going to move. You just want to move. They're that close, like you don't have a chance to think about this. They appear around a corner. Move. You want to move. It's harder to hit a moving target. Sweep your hands and push away, push away. And I don't think you're ever going to be in that situation, but just know that move. You have to move is what you have to do. And if you have to push away from a firearm, push away from a firearm. Again, this is where, just like if you're being physically aggressed, not with a weapon, move like you mean it. Your life does depend upon it. Commit to that course of action. Just go at it full throttle. If you can, call 911 even if you say nothing. So if you're maybe locked into a closet and it's a storeroom and it's in a restaurant, you're eating, and you and your family or your friend get into like a little storeroom somewhere, or you're in the back, and you can hear the shootings going on in the front still, or it's still happening, aggression's going on. You know what? Just put your volume down a little bit or whatever. Call 911 if you can't say anything. You're like, I don't want to say anything. They're going to hear it. And they also start getting, they can geolocate you. The 911 centers can, the cell phone signals. They can get within like several meters of accuracy of that cell phone. So they're probably getting multiple 911 calls. That's fine. But they're able to hear if you keep an open line. They can hear what's going on. If they need to disconnect from your call, they'll disconnect from your call. But if there is aggression going on or shooting going on and you just have an open line, they're going to get the location and they're automatically going to start sending people, officers meaning. I can't tell you the number of times that I would be, CANTCOM is our number one center in Kent County. CANTCOM to any unit in the area of 123 Main Street, any unit in the area of the South State Street, Wawa. We have an open line. It sounds like a fight. It sounds like something's breaking. Any unit in the area, please respond. And that's all you have. And you're going. But that's because someone has had an open 911 call. So if that's what you need to do it. That's okay. If you're going to call, when you're calling 911, if you have a chance to talk, like it's safe for you to talk, location of the suspect, if you know it, this is what they're going to want, the information. You might not have all of it. That's okay. You might have none of it. That is okay. But if you have the chance to give this information, location of the suspect, if you're like, I don't know, I don't even know if they're still here. They were out in front of the restaurant. They were near the deli I'm at the Walmart. They were near the deli. I don't know. That's where they were in the deli section near the front. They were near I don't know, the produce, whatever that looks like. The fruit. They were near the fruit. If that's how you get out, that's okay. And maybe they've moved from there, but that gives them something to go on. Number of suspects. If there's more than one, like I only saw one guy, or I think there could be two guys. Maybe it ends up being wrong. Maybe there's one guy. That's okay. That's okay. But given what you have, description of the suspects, if you have an idea, number and type of weapons, always helpful. If you're like, they have a small gun and a long gun, they know that's a handgun and that's probably a shotgun or a rifle. Number of victims, if you know that, you know what, I know there's several people laying down. I see someone bleeding. They're going to ask you that information. More is better, but if you don't have any of it, that's okay. I just talked about calling 911. Excuse me. So we don't have a ton of landlines. If you're using a landline, for example, maybe you're in a residence and you're calling 911 or a residence, it's within seconds that the 911 center knows where you are. It is literally almost instantaneous, like a nanosecond. And that is because all of that information, 911 centers get constant updates from the phone companies, the phone carriers, and there's a centralized clearinghouse. All that information, it's federally mandated and updated, that all that information from phone providers and carriers goes into that for landlines, and then that's connected to the 911 center. So when you call, I've been there in the 911 center, and you call from a landline, it automatically comes up literally the dispatcher, like they're answering and on their screen, it's saying 133 Main Street. Excuse me. If you have a cell phone, it just relies on information from the phone towers, but there's such good technology now that it's automatically triangulating and using trilateration to locate you within seconds. It's very, very quick. The only time it could take minutes, and it's not even really that common, would be if you were out in a very rural area, part of the country. We're in a very populated area. They're going to know where you are very, very quickly. It's just if you're out in, Wyoming or Montana, on a vacation or visiting, take a little bit for your 911 call to go through. After an incident, an active shooter incident, when law enforcement's arriving, obviously try to remain calm. I know that's hard. Deep breaths. Take deep breaths. That's something else to practice. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Right? Take those long breaths. It gives you a chance to decompress. It starts getting oxygen to the brain because you're getting shallow breaths. Like all of that is going to happen when you're in a critical incident. So try to remain calm. Take those deep breaths when you can, and that gets you to a calmer state. I will say this. They taught us this in the academy. They train you for everything, and this is what we sign up for, and we're like so excited about it. And you're responding to a domestic altercation with a shotgun, and you're like, or it's a robbery with a gun. And so you're running, your lights are going, and you're thinking about what you're going to do when you get there. But it's very easy. You get very much in this hyper vigilant, hyper state. And so you would do deep breathing, not because you're nervous, but you're excited. Not like happy for it to happen, but you're getting in an excited state. Your body's getting into that adrenaline dump and cortisol dump of hormones. So I would take 3 or 4 deep breaths, like in slowly and out, and that would get me back down. And I'm like, all right, I'm where I need to be. I'm going in like ready for business. So it's the same applies for you when you have a chance to take those, even during the event, but especially if like the dust is settling enough and the police are getting there, take those deep breaths that get you calm. And it helps a little bit, brings and deregulates. And again, I know this is common sense. You're thinking, Adrienne, like we know this, but do you do it all the time? Do you practice it? Probably not. I use it even when, even when I remember I talked about road rage. I'm going to own this. I'm the girl that gets a little irritated when people start getting sassy with me in the car. And I'm like, who are you driving like a lunatic to get mad at me? My girl. And then I'm like, because I've trained my brain to get calm, but I also take those deep breaths. It's so automatic for me. It just gets me back into that zone. I'm like, okay. Put down any items. You don't want anything in your hands. Your hands need to be up, finger spread, not even like this, finger spread if you can, like wide, like hands visible at all times. The law enforcement coming in, avoid quick movements. I mean, obviously you're going to be operating still on a lot of adrenaline at that point, but try not to make quick movements because officers in an active shooter, a lot of people are coming out. There's so much chaos and they're trying to figure out what's happening. Where's the suspect? What's going on? They're processing a lot of information at one time. So quick movements to them, like someone going, oh my God, that's going to get their attention. And that's also what shooters might do. And so, or bad people might do, those that are wishing harm or inflicting harm. So try to be just like this. You might point, they're back there, but, try to stay like this. I'm going to go ahead in the interest of time and skip the video. It just shows the run, hide, fight. That's all that does. So I'm gonna I'm talking about like thinking and creating neural pathways and thinking about where I go, where are my regular places? Because we all do it. We all go to the same stores. Like I'm a Walmart girl every Sunday morning, same place. I might take a different route here and there, but for the most part, I typically do that. So think about the places you go. Think about your doctor's office. And I mentioned this earlier, so I'm coming back to this. So think about your courthouse. Think about that you might go to whichever county you're in. Think about the parking situation, but think about the places you go and get your loved ones to think about this. Get the people you love that you go places with, or even if you're not with them going places, get them to think about this as well. Talk about it with your kids or your grandkids. Obviously, you're going to talk about with your grandkids. Make sure your kids know you're not freaking your grandkids out. And your own kids are like, what are you doing? But think about I want you to talk about situational awareness with them, and then about what are my points of exit or hide. So this is just an overview of it's just a blueprint from a Walmart, but it's in New York. But my point in this is that we think about the entrance, like we know where we come and go, right? We know those. We know like the big sliding doors where we come and go. But what about I know in mine, in the back area, it's refrigerated section where there's another exit out. That's actually where they take all the groceries, for people that do customer or grocery pickup. Or I know that there's one where they bring goods in and out along the back. Yeah, it's going to the back warehouse part, but all bets are off. You can go anywhere you need to go in an active shooter or some terrible event like that. Garden center. Go to the garden center. You can get out. There's a garden center there. I mean, there's a door usually there. So think about that. Think about other places than the obvious where you can exit or good places to hide. And going, I just mentioned this, like, think about your courthouse, like what that looks like where you could hide. If you use particular courtrooms or there's particular judges that you use, like, okay, I know, like, I can jump back there and hide under the desk, or I can go in where that back door is to go into the back where the judge comes from. If you have a very violent incident in that little courtroom, then that's where you're going to go. And again, that is okay. The parking garage, a residence, your healthcare, I mentioned all that. The gym, if you work out, go to the gym, maybe go to the Y, maybe go to Planet Fitness, whatever it looks like. Or like a small little gym that, in the neighborhood in someone's house, your store, your mall. Some other food for thought around an active shooter. Understand that gunfire may sound artificial. Once it happens, sometimes people say it sounds artificial like a pop gun. And that is what that really has to do with is when we talk about you, or I'm going to talk about what are some of the things that happen to you physically in a critical incident or a traumatic event. Active shooter is one of them, but you kind of get tunnel vision and you feel like you're a little bit far off and things just seem distorted. Your senses seem distorted. So that's why. Assume that any popping sound is gunfire. If there's two or more persons in the same place when a violent incident occurs, spread out. I mean, unless you are in a room that's closed off and you're hiding in the storeroom, but now you can hear them coming at the door. Then you both want to be near the door and you want to be able to like attack them coming in right then. But if you are already in an open area, you have nowhere to go, like space yourself out and keep moving. It's hard. If there's two of you together, it's an easy target. I hate to say that. It's a terrible way to think, but that is the reality of material. You're talking about worst case scenario and, getting out. Okay. And just, I'm talking about active shooter, but we always have to remember that, those deadly weapons, the harmful weapons can be knives, can be a blunt object, just be physical force, can be explosive. I'm not saying we're going to anticipate explosives, but just know that. Just know it could be any number of items that people use. But we see a lot of gun violence, unfortunately, because it's readily available and it can inflict maximum harm, which is what someone that wants to engage in an active shooting event is looking for. So what happens when that adrenaline hits? You have a loss of motor function, increased heart rate, shallower breathing, and that is because all the blood's going right in here. It's trying to keep you alive. So these babies, these extremities and your feet, they're not working as well, which is why you have loss of motor function. Tunnel vision, distorted senses, I said, like you get focused on like your sight, your realm of sight is automatically going to be here. Like I'm talking about situational awareness. It's hard to even break free from that and see what's going on around you. That's why the deep breathing, when you do deep breathing, you're telling yourself, okay, I'm aware of something around me because it's normal to go right here. When the interview officers involved in shooting events, they'll say as they start to recover in like the days and weeks and months afterwards, the memories are coming back. They'll say, I felt like I was in a tunnel. Like, I just remember this. This is all I recall is what was in this zone. And they don't even remember that there was or see what was on the sides of them. Excuse me. Sounds take a backseat other than gunshots often. You might pick up on other things, not right away. But in the weeks following, you might start to remember like odd sounds, like someone crying or someone yelling something weird in the background, but for the most part, gunshots during the event. This is some food for thought. When we look at how we handle these traumatic critical events, we code our mental states into code white, yellow, orange, red, and black. And so code white, that's home. That's where we're just cozy, we're comfortable. There's snow outside, or maybe not in Newcastle County. There's snow outside. We're just happy. We have our coffee. We're in our comfy clothes. In code white, it's where we find safety. It's our loved ones' places even. Code yellow is just more, we're more aware of what's going on. So every time I am outside, even in my yard, but if I'm definitely in public, I'm always in code yellow. Situational awareness is afoot. I'm always aware what's going on. So I'm not like, oh my gosh, something's wrong, but I'm always aware. I'm processing, I'm walking confidently. Usually I'm engaging with people, just trying to be friendly. I'm making eye contact just because I'm aware of what's going on, but just want to be friendly. And I'm like, hey, how are you today? That kind of thing. Code orange, something doesn't seem right. You're picking up on something. Maybe there's some elevated voices. You're in the store, you're in the doctor's office, there's a little bit of elevated voices. And you're like, that's not right. I think something's going wrong here. What's wrong? And you're kind of processing. And then maybe it just calms down and it's okay and it's better. but maybe it escalates and suddenly you hear, get off of me. Oh my God, don't shoot. And now you're in code red. And that is where things have gone very wrong. Code black is what we want to try to avoid. Sometimes we still go there. Code black is where we've just shut down. We've kind of gone black. Doesn't mean we've passed out, but our body has taken us to the point beyond our control, where we have no response. So going back to making that mental plan, I mentioned it, right? Just you think of your location, all that stuff, just determining your points of exit, where you're going to hide, what the weapon could be, picture it multiple times, go through it, have a plan with your family, have that conversation. All right. So it's 11:24. I'm going to try to, if you're Lauren, you think so, enough time, get through the piece on trauma, just a little bit about what happens in our biology of the brain and like why it doesn't work the way we want it to work during these events. So if y'all are good to continue on this flight, we're going to continue on the flight a little bit further. We'll be at our destination shortly. All right.
Adrienne, there is one question in the chat, and I'm not sure if this is the best time to ask it or not.
I'm looking.
But one of our folks is asking about running errands with a young adult son with autism who loves to be out and about. By herself, she can probably react and move quicker, but any tips on how to prep with my son who is nonverbal, but makes loud, happy noises often and has a cognitive development of a 2-year-old? What are some things we might be able to do in that situation?
Right. So you're not going to, obviously, your son is going to, obviously, be making noises, and that's very normal. So I think the best thing that you can do, that you could have a conversation, because of age. I think it's just very clear you have that established connection, first of all, where they respond to you, and always having them, if you can, within your sight and in physical contact so that you can guide quickly. Does that make sense? It's like having, I would say it would be like having, if you had I know it's larger, it's a grown person. I understand that, respect that. My nephew, as well. So we actually have to balance it back a little bit. But always keeping them in sight and keeping in close contact. His mom always basically has hands on. And then I think the planning just for you so that you're aware of what you need to do. You're aware of you've planned in this event. Where will I go? Where can I take him? What can we do? Where can we both hide? I think that's the best thing to do. I don't know that you can have conversations. If you're saying the cognition of a 2-year-old, it's hard, to help a 2-year-old understand this, but always planning for the both of you. And you're not going to prevent noise. I think that goes to, remember I said like being, quiet, not making noise, just trying to find this place that is as soundproof as possible if you have to hide, or getting out, knowing that you need to be out of a situation as fast as possible. Most of the time, you're going to have a way to run. I will say this, the majority of the time, wherever you are, you will have a place to run to or an opportunity to run. And so just getting out. I think that's the best that I can tell you. It's probably not the most helpful information, Lynn, but planning ahead of what that looks like and making sure that you can take that person, you take your son by the arm, and steer him where he needs to be. The best thing you can do. So it's a tough situation to encounter. Again, my nephew, he's certainly, a little bit more cognition, but definitely always work with him. I used to watch him as well. Same thing, is always just having hands on with him. I always held hands with him, even in his teen years. When we were out in public and just like out in Walmart, for instance, we'd always go out and, go shopping to find a Lego kit or something like that, to do. But aware all the time of what's happening. And he knew that he had to listen to me. Very clear, you're going to listen to me. You're going to listen to me. You're going to listen to me, and following my cue and going with me. And so practicing that ultimately, which I think is probably what you do. Yep. Adrienne, earlier in the presentation, you said you never stand in line. I'm thinking about the myriad occasions where we asked to stand in line to be next served. What's the alternative? You can't avoid being in line, but like I said, instead of like standing, like right behind someone, I turn. So if in theory, like the line is facing the camera right now, looking at the camera, and then, I would be the next person, I'm going to be turned this way. So at least I'm pivoted, and I've kind of moved my body a little bit out of the line, a little bit out of the queue. So I'm still in line. The people know I'm there, but I'm a little bit away. I did it in COVID all the time. I didn't want someone breathing on my neck. If someone was really close to me, breathing on my neck, remember we were deep in COVID, just happened. I'm like, I don't want you that close. Like moving a little bit and pivoting away so that you're still able to see what's going on. And you don't have someone so much in your personal space that they can grab a hold of you. Does that kind of make sense? Like when you're moved and you're perpendicular to them, they're like facing you and their backs to you, and you're able to kind of be, push away from someone, see what's going on, and then maybe moving a little bit. I'm always kind of moving. And it sometimes makes people uncomfortable because I move, but I move. I'm always moving. I'm always kind of like looking what's going on. I mean, obviously not awkwardly. Not flailing around, although that might help me get to the front of the line faster, but that's the best way to handle the lines. I mean, we still always have to be in line. I know I don't like it a whole lot. And the reason I don't like it is, so it's physically uncomfortable for me. Not that it matters what Adrienne's physically uncomfortable with. I understand that, but it's physically uncomfortable because our training as a law enforcement is nobody comes within arm's reach. Nobody comes within arm's reach. You know why? Because we have firearms, and you don't ever want, people are always going to be aggressive with law enforcement. It's constant that they're aggressive with us. You're probably not going to navigate that in your lifetime. We're always going to navigate that. And so I don't want them to have a chance, someone that's behind me in line, to be able to reach my gun. Even if a lot of safety mechanisms, we have a lot of things we do, a lot of safety mechanisms designed into the holster. I understand that, but it's so drilled in that we don't let people within arm's reach. And so that's why I do that in line, but it works hopefully for any of us. And that when you turn and they're facing this way, like towards you, you're kind of a little bit step to the side and you can move. I don't know if I explained that well. I know I've repeated myself, but it's kind of hard to explain when I'm sitting here and I'm not in line with people. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Excuse me. I want to get on a little bit about I just got your it does things. I'm looking at the I'm not trying to be disjointed. I was looking at the comments. So, all right, what's trauma? So it's different than stress. I mean, we all navigate stress, and sometimes we have like chronic stress and long term because we're just navigating a really tough time. Maybe we're navigating a chronic illness, or someone we love is, or there's just stuff going on, and it does impact us physically, but it is different than a traumatic event or trauma. Stress. You can see my examples, but trauma is an event that involves two things, like absolute terrible fear, like horror or terror, like extreme fear, along with that lack of control. And whether that's physical control because we physically can't move or we're grabbed, or we perceive we have no way out of a situation. Like, I don't know how to get out of this. So extreme horror, fear, and then that lack of control. So it's very different than stress. We navigate stress all the time. Most days probably, or at least most weeks, we navigate stress. Trauma is life-changing. So it's going to change you. It will have a permanent impact. Doesn't mean that we don't recover from it. We do. If we get help and we just approach it in a healthy manner, we can easily heal from it and move on. And I kind of liken trauma to aluminum foil, tin foil, aluminum foil, Reynolds aluminum foil, that stuff's strong. Like we can use it to cover anything. It's hardy, it's strong, it withstands a lot. And so when you use it, say you're covering a dish and you cover that dish, you're going to bake it in the oven, and you cover it with that aluminum foil and you put it in the oven and you get it back out when it's done. And then you take that foil off, you can use it again probably 10 more times. You'll crease it out, you'll lay it flat and you'll smooth it out. You'll still see the creases where it was used before, but that stuff still, it's resilient. It's going to keep working. It's going to work really, really well. That's trauma. It has its impact on us psychologically and emotionally, but if we deal with it, we can move on. We can work well, but it's going to have an impact. And the reason I bring that up is just because it's important for us to understand that these events that happen, these active shooter events, these critical incidents, they're traumatic and they have their impact, but we can heal from them and we can also prepare for them. So we know a lot about traumatic events and how it affects the neurobiology of our brain based upon, years ago, it was just upon the social sciences, like studying people and behaviors. And now we know because we have brain scans of people before traumatic events and after traumatic events, and even people that they simulate traumatic events as part of research. Sounds terrible. I wouldn't want to do it. I'm not sure I would volunteer for that, but there's folks that do that. Excuse me. So, and the other piece is there's a subjective component to that. If you've been through certain kind of traumatic events, you're going to navigate it better the next time. I hate to think people go through multiple traumatic events, but they do. Think about the kids that you serve. They've all gone through multiple traumatic events, and they handle them, a little bit different each time, but they manage to keep handling them. When they get help, it's even better for them, but you can keep going. All right, so I'm going to talk about 3 parts of the brain as it relates to a traumatic event. And again, I'm obviously not a neurobiologist, clearly. So, but I want to go into the basics from the training and education I had around this so that I could then train law enforcement. So the prefrontal cortex It is that part that takes care of executive functioning. It's that advanced part of the brain responsible for like thinking logically, coming up with a course of action, controlling our attention and our focus, and integrating memory data points. So memory data points are those pieces of the puzzle of an event that, they're little pieces. When an event happens, it's a bunch of different input into the brain. They're like little puzzle pieces. And so that prefrontal cortex takes those puzzle pieces and it makes them into one coherent picture. Make sense? Advanced functioning part. When it makes sense, when the prefrontal cortex isn't working right for some reason, that you're not going to really have the ability to come up with a logical, coherent account of event, or sometimes come up with a logical, coherent course of action in that moment. You might do some stuff and think of some things, but you're not going to come out with the most complex plan in the height of a critical incident. So the amygdala is the early warning system, and that detects the threats in the environment. Remember, we talked about sometimes you get that spidey sense, and you're like, something doesn't feel right. And then your brain starts processing, and your brain is like, oh, I see something that doesn't seem right. That person doesn't seem right. That situation, that vehicle, whatever that is, doesn't seem right. And then the amygdala starts that hormone dump, and it starts putting out there, it's preparing you for fight, flight, or freeze. But it's going to start putting out adrenaline, which we're used to. We all are familiar with that. Cortisol. We all hear about cortisol and its unhealthy effects. And then some naturally occurring opioid compounds on the body and oxytocin. There's a few others that is putting out there, but those are the opioid compounds, and the oxytocin are designed to try and offset a little bit the cortisol and adrenaline, because we know those are very hard on the body. They serve a purpose, but they're hard on the body. And the amygdala is very responsible for emotions. So it's that primal part. Emotions are primal. Those are things that instinctually come to us. We don't think and then decide to feel like, I think. I'm not saying we can't work ourselves into a happy day or a sad day on our thinking, but for the most part, we don't go, I'm thinking happy thoughts, so I'm happy at the moment. That's not usually how that works. It's the amygdala that's deciding our emotions. The hippocampus has a couple different functions. And so it's really has a lot to do with helping to create our memories. So our memories begin as a collection of sensory data input, as I mentioned, they're data points. So as we're going through this whole day, we're getting pieces of sensory input. We're not even consciously thinking like, oh, I'm feeling cold right now, or my throat feels scratchy. It's just happening. My brain is getting that physical input of like, it's bright out, the snow is white, it's cold, it's hot, it's whatever that is. It's automatic. Adrienne's voice is high pitched. My feet feel uncomfortable, whatever that looks like. You're automatically, your brain's getting all that without you thinking, without anything, it's coming in. And then the hippocampus starts taking that sensory input that we don't even think about, and it starts identifying that as, like I said, it feels cold, and you realize it's cold. Or, hey, it's taking this auditory sensation as that's high pitch. Does it make sense? So it's starting to identify what that sensory input is. Now, the hippocampus is also very strongly sensitive to hormonal fluctuations. You can see where this is going. So when the amygdala in a critical incident, the traumatic event happens, the amygdala starts pumping out those chemicals, a lot of adrenaline, a lot of cortisol, to gear you for fight or flight. Your hippocampus is now starting to not work as well, and it's not able to code what that sensory input is. It's not able to code like, that's cold, that's hot, this is soft, this is hard, this smells weird, or whatever that is. You're not working as well. Your brain is what I'm getting at. So something else your hippocampus does. And I love when I talk to a crew that's in my age group, has some experience, they've been around a little bit, because I use this comparison and I say, your hippocampus, once the critical incident, traumatic event starts to happen, it's responsible for going into your card catalog. Remember, we used to go to the library and we get the card catalog, and everything's electronic now, right? They Google everything, right? And technology is pretty cool. But we used to go to the library and you would start going through the card catalog and you're like, I'm looking for this book. So your hippocampus is going through the card catalog in your brain and it's looking for an event. So I am now in a store and I'm hearing bang, 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 or I'm hearing people screaming. And it's getting loud. And I'm hearing like, no, help. Okay, your hippocampus is going in the card catalog of events that you've encountered that are the same or very similar, because what it wants to do is pull that card out and start relying on that. This is my course of action. I've been through this before. I'm going to rely on that. So this kind of makes sense why I talk about think through what you might do in certain scenarios. I'm in the store and this happens. I'm pulling up to this house for my home visit and I thought about what will happen. I'm in the parking garage and I thought about what will happen. because maybe you haven't physically gone through that event of like, oh my gosh, someone has a gun in the parking garage. You haven't physically navigated it, but your brain has at least thought this through, right? You thought about it. So there is something in the card catalog. Is it as great as actually practicing it physically? No. But your brain has created a neural pathway. So there's something. Your hippocampus can pull on that and maybe start to take a course of action. See why it starts to become important that you think this through? Adrienne's not just talking for fun and saying, hey, let's think about this. Like, it can be very helpful to you. That's why law enforcement trains repeatedly. They go to the firearms range all the time and all the time and all the time. Multiple times a year. We practice the same things over and over and over and over and over about, like, how we practice if our gun malfunctions, what we do, and how we get behind cover. Like, you just don't, reload unless you're behind cover where you're hidden. We practice it because that way, when the critical incident, if it should happen to us, we can go to that. Make sense? So again, you want to just think about, what will I do, and make it happen. Start making it a habit that, you don't get out of your car. You're going to physically start. I'm not going to get out of I'm not going to open my car door until I have everything I need. It's in my pocket. It's wherever it needs to be. And I'm ready to go. You're practicing that. Okay. During the traumatic event, as I mentioned, your prefrontal cortex is less active because your amygdala is kicking out all those chemicals. Your hippocampus isn't working as well. And so ultimately, like, I just breezed through all that anyway, without going through these slides. I do that. I get ahead of myself. Your hippocampus is starting to look for that, in that card catalog for an event. Hopefully you've worked through this. You've created some neural pathways so that it can fall back on those roadmaps. Excuse me. Your brain is going to go into fight, flight, or freeze, as I mentioned. And so if you have something in the card catalog, it can take that fight or flight, which I talked about. Am I going to run? Am I going to have to fight? But at least it can do something. Freeze is a very real option that any and all of us, doesn't matter how tough and big and bad we are, can happen to any of us. Freeze happens because the brain is so overloaded, or it's got nothing to fall back on. It's never processed this possible event, and so we can freeze. And so it's very normal. We don't have control over it. There's dissociation where the brain just disengages from the event, so you don't feel as much, because remember I said the amygdala kind of starts to take over because it's dumping chemicals, and it's really emotional. It ties into emotion. So one thing that people will say is that your senses are very heightened. They're distorted, but heightened. And so sounds are really loud, and smells can be really strong, and those sensations. And so that's overwhelming. And so the brain will sometimes dissociate, so you don't feel it as impactfully. That's why combat veterans will dissociate sometimes. Sexual assault victims very frequently dissociate because it's a very horrifying event physically that's happened to them. And so their body dissociates. Just know that does it matter? Does it change how you're going to do things? No, but please know that it's not uncommon if you have ever gone through that or might have to go through that. Sometimes we freeze. There's tonic immobility, which is really where the body becomes like frozen in fear. Your body's like, don't move. It's frozen in fear. And it's very hard for people to navigate that after the fact that they did that. But we go to, like, again, sexual assault. Sexual assault victims are very hard on themselves. And sometimes investigators are hard on them. Shouldn't be. But they're hard on them because those victims are frozen. And like, why didn't you fight? I didn't fight because I've never been through this, and it's horrifying, and my body shut down. And then collapsed. And that's just where people don't take any action because their body's like a limp, like the possum here. That we say the possums play dead. They don't consciously do it. Their body automatically does it. Why is that? Predator prey. And so what we know is predators are looking for the prey to run. As soon as you talk about, like, when a dog, they say if the dog seems aggressive, don't turn and run. It triggers the prey drive and the chasing. So do nothing. And that's what the body does on its own sometimes. It just plays dead and you can't move your limb. I'm not saying that these will happen, but just know there are possibilities in an event for any of us. Right, I'm going to get right to the end here. I'm going to get to the conscious of time, Lauren, get down to the VIP program. But I just want to, give you an idea of this is what happens in the brain and why it's so important to try and build those neural pathways, but also know that sometimes all the stuff Adrienne talked about, you know what, it might not happen just because of the fact that, multiple factors. Number one is it's so completely overwhelming that our body shuts it down for us. Do I think that'll happen? No, but is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. And it's not uncommon. Also know that in a traumatic event, you might not be able to speak the way you want to speak. And that is because your area of your brain that helps you speak called Broca's area to the prefrontal cortex, and that starts shutting down during a traumatic event. So you might not be screaming. You can get help or yell. You'll get those out, but you might not be able to engage in a lot of really good conversations. So you're calling 911. You might not be able to even get good words out to 911. Just keep the open line. Keep that phone open, and you're talking. I'm going to skip through all that. Okay, domestic VIP. So this is a helpful little program. I don't know how many of you know about this, but we're going to share today. And if you've heard before, great, you're going to hear again. It's only going to be 2 more minutes. Capitol Police Department developed this in coordination really with our court system, our administrative office of the courts after the courthouse shooting, because what we realized was, we can't prevent, if someone wants to inflict harm, they're going to inflict harm. We can't prevent everything. But in, retrospect, 2020 hindsight, maybe that could have been preventable because they were in there for some seemingly benign event at the courthouse that day, the Matusowitz family. But it was for, child support. But which seems like a benign event, right? But what we knew is there's that long history of the kids had been kidnapped. It was very contentious. The family was contentious with the mom. And we should have really done a better job as a system, not one person at all or one agency. But, if it had been shared with the courthouse that she was coming in for a child support hearing that day, but that her ex-husband and his parents were really, really angry, had kidnapped the family before, and that, there had been threats of violence in the past, that, he kidnapped the kids for a year. If they had known that, they'd have taken different actions. Like she'd have come in a protected manner. Things would have just played out a lot differently. And maybe she and her friend would have survived that day. And so we try to learn from that. Again, this isn't a criticism at all, not one bit. But the Capitol PD and the courts decided, let's do things different. And so they built this. It's the first one in the nation. Other jurisdictions around the country call Capitol Police Department to talk about this. So what you can do is it's the Domestic Violence Intervention Program through Capitol PD. And you can go to, hold on, I'm going to go through that real quick. You can go, Lauren has it. It is at the Capitol Police Department website, Family Court's website, but she has the link for it. I gave it to her this morning. She'll share it with you. You click on it, or you can go, like I said, you can go to the Capitol Police, Google Capitol Police Department, Delaware, their website. You go on it, and there's that little icon you see here, VIP, Domestic Violence Program. You click on that in the bottom left, and it brings you to the screen. And what you can do is you can fill it out if you have a hearing in the courthouse and you are concerned that it could get contentious, that maybe there's been history, there's been some threats, there is tension building around it, comments have been made, whatever that looks like, but you feel that it has the potential to be violent in any way, shape, or form, like just physical fighting going on, whether it's against you, it's against someone else, it's against one of the parties involved in the family, whatever that looks like, or just in general, like they're mad at the court. Someone has said, I'm going to come in and I'm mad at the courts. I'm tired of them taking my kid from me, and I'm gonna make a statement. Maybe that's what it is. You can click on this program. There's no cost. You put in your name, your phone number, who needs assistance. If it's you, if you're doing it on behalf of someone who needs that assistance, the CASA coordinators could fill it out maybe for someone that they're helping out that needs assistance. You see it where private attorneys will fill it out for a client that they're representing, whatever that looks like. Domestic violence, people in the public, someone has a domestic violence hearing. A domestic violence victim has a hearing for PFA, protection from abuse order. And maybe a family member fills it out for them. But you just go in, it's that simple. The screenshot you're seeing is what it looks like when you click on it. You fill it out. Your comment is what's going on, like why you feel it's unsafe. And then Capitol Police Department will do a background check. They literally go through and check everybody through Delgis to look to see, are there any court orders? What's the criminal history? Is there a history of violence of the parties, of any of the parties involved? And then they can do a workup. They'll contact you and they'll say, hey, maybe you're just saying this is a warning that there's some whispers down the lane that something could happen. And they're going to be like, okay, they'll contact you and be like, do you think it's like really could come to fruition? Or you're like, I don't know. Then what they'll do is they might say like, okay, we're going to get you in there and then we're going to get you quickly separated from the other parties. It could be that they've done so much as to have you come in, parties come in the back door at the courthouse. where the prison vans come in, for example, or where like the judicial parties come in, like the judges come in. They have even gone so far, I'm not saying that they do this for most cases, but they've even gone so far as to send detectives in unmarked cars to homes and pick people up and bring them in when there's been actual acts of violence in the past with that family. So they'll work with you. They'll do a workup on the parties involved. They'll look to see, they have a scaling system, a rating system to see how aggressive it could be based upon the information. And then they'll contact you, and they'll do a workup. They might say, hey, we're going to have you come in at a different time. And then they'll have the other party come in at a different time. They'll schedule you to come in 15 minutes later. They'll have the other party get there first, the dangerous party, and then they'll have you come in at a different time 15 minutes later. So they have a lot of ways to make you or help you be safe. So know that is available to you. It's available to anybody with a hearing in there. So John or Jane Q Public, CASAs, CASA coordinators, attorneys, police, anybody. So I think I've made that clear. Avail yourself of that. And the gentleman that runs it, he now has another assistant that just joined with him. He's a retired trooper. Both of the men are. They work at Capitol Police Department. They're retired. They're civilians, but they work right with Capitol Police Department, hand in hand. There's certain detectives assigned to this. So there's a core group of people. They're the ones that are familiar with the program. They're used to doing this. They're the ones that are going to do the workups with you. So notes there. I apologize it took so long. It's a lot of material. I always think about cutting some stuff out. Some of it's repetitive, but I also like to keep the repetitive stuff in because I want to remind you, situational awareness, it just goes a long way. And, make a plan, make a mental plan, and talk with the people you love. Talk with them. It can make the difference 100%. The reason that we do this is I want every one of you to be safe. I want you to come home. I want your loved ones to have you another day, the rest of your life. That's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. And protecting those kids, making sure they're safe too. So any other questions? Oh, come on. I love questions. I know you're probably tired of listening. You're like, my ears are numb. My tuchus is numb, Adrienne. but I welcome questions. If you choose not to today or something comes up later, Lauren has my contact information. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to clarify anything. I'll never do a training and not be available to answer questions. I've had mandatory reporting trainings and, a year later had someone contact me. I'm always happy. You can tell I'm a talker. I'm always happy to talk about it.
Adrienne, can I ask you a question related to something that happened to me a month ago and just get feedback on what I should have done? I was at the mall meeting a friend. Again, you get those feelings like something is not right here. Pull up, there's a ton of cop cars. I park and I see hundreds of teens running for main event. And you're like, this isn't good. My friend pulls up next to me. We get out, we're hugging each other, and we hear gunshots coming from the parking lot in the fashion center, multiple ones. And we're like, what do we do? Like at school, we're trained to go hide in the bathroom with kids, right? We're like, we're in the parking lot. Do we just get back in our car and like hunch down? Should we have ran into a store? Like, we didn't know what to do. And then it was so crowded, we couldn't get out right away. And then we hear more rounds of gunshots. And we're like, and to leave the mall area, we have to go by where the gunshots are coming. And like by this point, the police are leaving main event and following the gunshot.
Right. It is tough. Like every situation is a little bit different. I know what you're talking about up there at main event. So you want to obviously it's hard to tell, right? So when there's gunshots, you think you know where it's coming from, but there's a lot of ricocheting and it's a lot of noise. Like it's so much your brain's processing. But you want to, if you can get in your car, you can get in your car. It just depends. Like if you're too close to it, getting in your car is probably not the best option. You want to try to move, get away from it. You don't want to be trapped in your car. If you're far enough away, get in your car. You know what I mean? Like if it's that the police cars have blocked you in, but you're far enough away from the event, you can get in your car and duck down, but you want to hide. You want to be hidden as far down as you can go. So you're out of sight. If you got to get on that floorboard, squeeze yourself in like you are squeezing yourself in a shoebox. If you can, I would say you want to run, try to get in the other direction. Get to movement, move away from it and move. If you have to leave your car and you're now on foot and you are 500 feet away from it or 500 yards away from your car, that is okay. But you had a situation where you can get away from it. For the most part, you can tell where the gunfire's coming from. The other piece is it's your brain's processing it and you're thinking, what? I don't, because you're thinking like danger's everywhere, right? At that point, you're like, I don't even know. And sometimes we hear about, could there be someone else at another store? Is it possible there's two shooters and one's at the main event and one's, down here at Crumble, right? Cookie. Absolutely it's possible. It's probably not likely. Start moving, but if you're running, leaving, If, however, you hear gunfire where you're going, then you just direct your course of action somewhere else. You're going to keep moving. That's the best thing I can tell you is keep moving, and you're going to keep reassessing, because it's the other piece is it's ever changing, which I didn't hit on, but it's an ever changing event. So there's gunfire here, but maybe the gunfire is moving because now the police are coming in, and this person's like, whoa, I'm going over here. So, and then you have a throng up, you're right, there's just tons of people coming at you. You truly had a chaotic event. You had a taste of like, it is so much to process. So much to
And at
process.
that point, you don't know that they weren't shooting at somebody, they were just shooting in the air, but it's still like, oh my gosh.
You have to assume if there's gunshots,
Yeah.
you assume they're shooting at somebody. And here's the other thing to think about: when they're shooting in the air, you do know that comes back down, and that still can kill a person. I'm sorry to say that. I know that's terrible. I hate talking about such morbid topics, or I'd rather talk about the good stuff. But it's the reality. So just know if they're shooting in the air, bullets come down. A bullet can travel up depending on how, if they're straight up, and then that will come kind of close, but there's wind. They can take things. There's a lot of other factors at play, but if they shoot kind of like this at an angle, I mean, they've had bullets in the city. They do this at like New Year's Eve in the city quite often to celebrate. Bullets have come down 3/4 of a mile away and struck someone in the head. So I know that's terrible to tell you, but my point is like we have to assume any bullet can hit us. So run, move, 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 get away from it. And again, you might course correct, but get away from it. And then if you can get behind cover, if you can get behind something, like I said, you might end up like you feel like, oh my gosh, now there's someone over here. Then if you duck behind the car and you're regrouping for a minute and you're trying to figure out what's happening. And then there's a lot of people, you're trying to get around people. That's the other piece. You're kind of stuck to with there's a throng of people. You're kind of stuck in a throng. That also limits. Think about New Orleans, right? New Year's, there's so many people, you're kind of stuck. Sometimes you can't move. So you just try to keep moving and keep moving. So in processing, you just keep thinking, and deep breaths. That's where I go to like the deep breaths. Practice it. Just practice. Practice if you start getting nervous about something. And you're thinking like, what am I getting nervous? We all have things we get nervous about. Think about it. Maybe you might get a little bit nervous when you're thinking about going for a CASA hearing or going for hearing for a kid as a CASA. And so you can start practicing then like those deep breaths and what those deep breaths look like and what they feel like. And you have ingrained it in your head. So it is very, very automatic. As soon as as soon as the call came in and I'm setting the lights, I didn't even think about it. Deep breaths were happening because I practice it so much, but that helps you because you're breaking that tunnel vision by the deep breaths. You're getting oxygen in, which is helping. And then that's going to help you to be able to start reassessing as well. Like, do I need to change where I'm running to? I like to say you run and you're safe there, but it's a dynamic event. It's a dynamic event. So does that kind of answer your question, Darcy?
Yeah. I will not be going back to the mall, but yes, thank you.
And that's, remember I talked about traumatic events and how they're life changing, and we can navigate through, but we have to kind of work through it and work through those fears and process how we feel. And the fact that there's also going to be, I didn't hit this slide, that, it's the PTSD. Odd sounds like going to the mall. It might be a while. I mean, that's why people have car crashes that are serious. Sometimes they hesitate to get back in a car and it takes them a while to get back in a car and drive again. It's hard. And so, you're like, I'm not going back to the mall. I will say this, I choose wisely. I mean, you can't always predict. I choose wisely. I try not to run my errands and do things during the busiest times. You reduce your chances of things happening. But, as a cop, so you don't control the times you do things, right? Too much. But a lot of food for thought. Remember, the likelihood is very slim any of this will happen, but your brain's already thinking about it. And you're going to have conversations with your loved ones, right? You're like, thanks, Adrienne. I don't want to have this morbid conversation. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm available by email. I thank you for your time and listening. And I thank you for what you do. I know you do it for other reasons, but I thank you for what you do because, a lifetime of responding to these cases, it's so good to know that there's folks like you that are willing to go out there and stand in for these kids. It's awesome.
Adrienne, thank you so much. We so very much appreciate it. Good luck in the mandatory training you have next, and I hope everyone stays warm and dry.